Okay, so in this video, I want to talking with you guys about the topic of the core component of every backend system. So for backend system and a software system in general, in the surface, they look quite different. They have different feature, function, on a different niche, but actually behind the scene, they're sharing many core component, parent and stuff. And understand this can help you guys building a new software faster, easier, building a new feature easier as well. So why not getting started? So I want to divide the core component to two parts. One is the infrastructure part. The second one is the API logic. For infrastructure, which is a physical layer of every system, we're going to have for core component. I think every system will need this one, which is the API server, cron job, database, and blob storage. Why? So imagine in real life when you're meeting your user, your client, what they're gonna do when they meet you. Like they want to ask you something and then remind you something to do later for them. Maybe, of course, the main thing is looking for help. But can we map this one to a requirement of any business? So for business, we have some core component, which is the API server, cron job, which is the core computing layer. So why this? Why we only need this kind of two component? The first thing is the API server. The main reason is the main purpose of this component is for serving a new request. Let's say, for example, a request sending to this API server, and then we're gonna respond it as soon as possible. So this API server is usually trying to serve the request like reading a blog post or store something. The main thing is we're gonna process it immediately. So for cron job, it's gonna be quite different. It's gonna we want to solving some stuff in scheduling for user. Let's say the user want to have something like cleaning up their mailbox day by day or publish their content on schedule, or sometimes generating a report for them in first day of the month. So this cron job will keeping that work for us. For storage layer, I think we're going to have two main components, which is the database and the blob storage. For database, um, database is for structured data. Let's see in real life. We have many structured data, which is a table and then the Excel file. And especially in the financing stuff, we have a lot of table and structured data. So for database, the main thing it deal is structured data, and we see it a lot. And blob storage, which is another kind of storage solution, which is we use for storing unstructured data, which is file, and which is includes the images and videos and all essentially binary file. So for this one, we're gonna have one storage layer for the main structured data, and then blob storage for file data. So in real life, maybe you can see many kind of different component, which is Redis or a load balancer or a queue, but they're actually solving a quite different problems of business, which is reliability and then speed and then performance. But for functional requirement, like a real thing that the business needs, usually this for component is usually enough. The next section is I want to discuss with you guys about the API logic, which is the main place to solving any business problem. So let's say, for example, an user want to editing a post. Of course, they're gonna send a request to our system, right? So from this request, we need to process it. And the first layer we're gonna do is we need to check who is this user, and does this user having a permission to do the current action, which is editing a post. So that's we're gonna usually call authentication and authorization layer, which is the first core to our system. The next part is we need to validate the data to see if the user request having a correct structure, having a correct data format yet. And if it's already all good, then we go into the next step. And the next step is, and usually we need to fetching data from somewhere else, like from the database or from a third-party service to processing. So the next layer is, I think, the data storage access, and the third-party service access is usually we need next. And then the heart is our business logic over here, which is the main place that we're solving a business problems. So of course, you see most of the time, the logic is quite simple, just create, edit, delete, and get maybe. But many of the times, the business logic in here is quite complex, which is you can call it calculating an order value or um, promotion value and something like that. That is quite complex, and we need to tailor this business logic is quite well. And maybe after we processing the data and doing the logic, we're gonna want to store the data back to other database, or we want to send a notification or data to another service. So that's we go back to the last layer. Of course, you guys can argue that the API logic contains another business and problems and element as well. But from my experience, any API can break into this five elements exactly. Yeah. And we actually have some pattern that treating the business logic as the heart of the architecture, and we're treating other element as a other layer of the architecture as well. So that's called domain-driven design. That was kind of interesting. You guys can take a look at that. Yeah, I think this is a very short video that I want to discuss with you guys about the core component of every backend system. Um, Many of the times you might see very complex system and then having a complex element. But in my opinion, to solving a business requirement, we know we don't need a fancy architecture or a lot of element. Just this one is enough. So I hope you guys see some value in my video and see you in the next one.